Well, good morning, everyone. I love that I had to shout over you to find your seats. That is exactly what I was hoping for today. So thank you all for being here at the Evident Proposers Day. I'm Glenn Coppersmith. I'm the acting director of our Proactive Health Office at ARPA-H. And Evident is one of the efforts that's underneath the Proactive Health Office. You're going to hear from a bunch of us today about a bunch of things, but first and foremost, thank you all for taking the time to be here in DC or to join us online and to share your valuable time and brain space with us. This is a particularly exciting moment for me, and I think for this community. There's a wealth of untapped potential here. There's been a strong desire to make progress in this space, and so I'm so thrilled to have all of you together thinking about these problems. I'd like to start by setting some intentions for the day, at least what I hope we get out of this, and you guys might have some slightly different intentions, but mine at least are, one, I want to talk to you guys about Evident. We, the team, want to make sure that you guys know what Evident is about, and I hope you leave here with a clear picture of what that is and share some of the excitement that we have about what's present there. But second, and this is by far more important to me over the long term, is to have this ecosystem engaged. And so a lot of the intention here is for you guys to meet each other and hear from each other. This Evident is the first step in a whole lot of mental health work that ARPA-H intends to do and that the federal government intends to do. Maybe I'm not supposed to say intends. I think I'm allowed to say intends. But this is the beginning of a longer journey. And so I would encourage all of you to take time and meet the other people who are here. This is a very interesting smattering of people. We have people from every piece of this mental health ecosystem that don't traditionally work together. And so that's a lot of the excitement for me today. So my second intention for you that I would hope that you take is take time, hear from each other, work with each other, get to know each other. This has been the effect of a very large team that has been working on this for various amounts of time. Alicia will talk a bit more about that. But what I'd like to do first and foremost is to welcome you to that team. You guys are part of what will make this all successful, and I'm really excited for that journey for us over the next number of years. And so not all of you will end up being performers on Evident, but you are all members of this team and will be part of the work that is going forward. And so you'll meet many of the other team members over the course of time here, but I'd like to first invite our director at ARPA-H to come up and give some remarks about Evident, about ARPA-H and the ARPA-H model. And so here's Alicia Jackson.
Well, that's a very tough act to follow. Glenn is one of our most incredible PMs at ARPA-H. I met him pretty soon when I joined. I was sworn in on October 20th, so only been here about a month and a half, but learned about Glenn, his effort, and really how it was an incredible secretary of HHS priority. It was a campaign promise to be able to bring mental health breakthroughs to veterans. And I showed up, we immediately got to work, and I think what's most incredible is this program from start to launch was only 3 months. And that's a huge priority for me when I joined ARPA-H is speed. A lot of the federal government simply doesn't have the tools and resources to move at that speed, but we understand these problems are too important to waste a day. Every day counts. Every day that we're delayed, somebody isn't getting the care, the treatment, the solution that they need. And so I was so thrilled to see Glenn, Nate, the entire team come together and really just blow not only me away, blow the secretary away. Really incredible in terms of not just the quality of the program, but the speed. People were speechless when we showed up and we said, here's the plan. And that is amazing to me, to be able to come up with something so strong in less than 3 months. But it just shows you the quality of Glenn and Nate and the entire team. So let me get started with talking about ARPA-H. Who has done any work with an ARPA before here? Okay, a few of you. Well, to those of you who haven't, you're about to embark on one of the best journeys of your entire life. I had the pleasure, and I truly mean it, you're gonna have some of the most fun you'll ever have, working with Glenn and his team to really take something that maybe we thought could be done, I don't know, maybe it'll be true in the next 20 or 30 years, and now we're making it happen, in less than 5, ideally. That's really exciting because ARPA-H is really a time machine. We take those bold ideas, things that say maybe it's possible, but it's kind of science fiction-y, maybe I'll see it happen in my lifetime, and we say, no, we know some new scientific breakthroughs, we think there are uncharted paths that we can go down, and let's make sure we can bring the right group of people together, very focused funding. We bring you together and we say, okay, here's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna work together to make sure that this happens. I have seen this happen personally. I spent 6 years at DARPA, first as a program manager and then deputy office director of the biotech office there. I saw multiple times things that seemed like science fiction happen in less than 4 or 5 years, sometimes less than a decade, but it was due to that focus and intention of making something that had never been thought about before actually happen and become reality. And there's nothing more satisfying than understanding that you have the most precious dollars in the world invested in making the future happen. Every taxpayer has given $1, $2, however much money to this agency out of their pocket because they believe that we will make the investments that will not only make the lives of themselves better, but those of their children and their loved ones. And I think that's especially apt with Evident. I think nearly 50% of all Americans are suffering from some sort of mental health illness. And that not only affects them, but it affects everyone around them who loves and cares for them. And to be able to give them their lives back so that they can feel like themselves again and that their family feels like they have their person back is just one of the most valuable things I think that we can do, for our nation and especially for our veterans. And so I'm just really grateful for everyone being here, for showing up, for saying, yeah, let's tackle this. I'm gonna bring the best minds together, our best ideas. We're gonna take risks that a lot of other people don't have the guts to take. This is really defining of an ARPA. Because we act as this time machine, what it means is we have to go after the highest risk problems. Things that a lot of people are gonna say, oh, that's impossible. That's already been tried. And we have to go after them and say, no, we have new ideas. The science has evolved. You know what? Maybe it hasn't been tried yet, but we're going to try it because we have that flexibility. These are often things that academia won't have enough resources to do, or they're too risky that they can't get funded by the traditional agencies. These are things that tons of startups would love to do, but it's hard to get the venture capital investment or other types of investment because, again, they're so bold, they're so big, we're not sure if it's going to have a payoff, and we're not sure when the economic return is going to come. And so one of the magical things we can do is put that funding forward and say, we're willing to take the risk. We have no problem taking risk. When I left DARPA and got into the private sector and started 2 companies, all I could think to myself was, man, I wish I had taken more risk, because there is no one else who can do this. It's very, very unique. The number 2 distinguishing feature of an ARPA is the speed at which we run. And I think that's completely exemplified here by Glenn and his team, and it's one of my major priorities as the new ARPA-H director. And then number 3 is bold vision. It's very easy to look at a problem and say, well, how can we kind of fix the current solution? Our whole motto is, what if we were to redesign the solution today with everything that we know? And I think that's a lot of what we're doing here today, which is for so long, mental health has been defined by subjective measures. And that's very challenging, not only when figuring out how to help someone, but also for all the companies that are trying to figure out what's the right treatment that's gonna work for this person, and what do we expect the outcomes to be. And the minute that we can start to have these objective measures, we're much better at classification, we're much better at matching the right person with the right treatment and understanding when to give it, and we're much better at understanding, did this actually work? And we can really, in some cases, remove a lot of the placebo effect that we see today, especially with subjective measurements. So I'm completely thrilled about this. So let me talk about your guys' role. As I said, you're going to have the best time in your entire life if you become a performer with ARPA-H, and we hope many of you will continue to be performers. It's a very different relationship than you'll have with a lot of the other agencies out there, NIH, NSF, DOE, whoever it might be. We're not so much a grant-making organization. This is really a partnership, and so we use a contracting mechanism with you that says, okay, here's what we're aiming to do. Here are the milestones along the way. We understand where the risks are. We need you to tell us where the risks are. That's how we actually understand, if you understand what you're doing and what those risks are, and some other theories about how you might be able to move around those risks when they arrive. Anybody who's ever developed anything understands something goes wrong. At some point, something goes wrong, and the mark of a great performer is that they tell you ahead of time. They say, look, this isn't going so well, and they provide you another solution. No surprises ever. When I was a PM, I remember the first thing I told my performers, never surprise me. I don't want to show up to a program review meeting and suddenly you're telling me that something isn't working and you've known for like 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever it might be. So I had all my performers on speed dial, and they would call me and I would call them. And one of them once called me and said, hey, that approach we were taking, it just isn't working. But guess what? We just found out about this new technology called CRISPR. It's not that public right now. And so we actually started trying it, and it seems to work for everything. And I said, go ahead, do it. Like, you came with me with the issue, you're not hitting your marks. So you went, you found another solution, you tested it out, you called me and you told me, here's what we're doing. No problem. That made them a shining star in my mind because they came ahead of time and told me. So we have a really flexible mechanism with these contracts to be able to shut down whatever isn't working, plus up what is, move money around. And it really is about the partnership between your contract, between Glenn and Nate, and between what you're doing. And so this really is very, very different. We do active program management. Like I said, I had my performers on speed dial, and I was in partnership with them. Not only would I go visit them, but I would be like, hey, what's going on? What's the new news? Because the best way to ensure that all the goodness is coming up through the chain, coming up from you to Nate, to me, the director, to the secretary, even up to the president, is to be able to say, hey, here's what's working. We're really excited about this. Here's what matters. And I hope all of you take advantage of that opportunity. A couple more notes that I have just to make sure I've covered everything. As I'm here, we're really trying to change and shift the organization from startup mode into performance mode. So we're doing a lot of shifts. We're raising the bar right now at ARPA-H. That means taking bigger bets. That means finding incredible program managers, and I hope some of you will consider that. They are the lifeblood of our entire organization, and the organization is built around them. I will tell you that as a PM, that was also one of the most fun jobs in the world, and I think you can talk to the PMs here and they will tell you the same. If you have a big dream, something you can't stop thinking about that's kept you awake for nights and nights, that you've almost become obsessive about, think about becoming a PM for real. We need people with really big visions, really big dreams, who understand that there's a lot of risk, that when they say the thing they're going after, a lot of people will say, oh, no way that can happen. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are very deeply technical, right? We need to understand that you understand science, technology, and even more important, you know when to call bullshit on something, because there's a lot of people who are going to be pitching you a lot of things when you come as a PM. And then number two, you need to be deeply competent. And what I mean by that is you know how to take an idea from vision to reality. You have that dynamic range. That's also a very special skill that we need. And then number three, you need to be obsessed. You need to break through brick walls. Say, well, what does the law really say about that? There's a lot of rules out there that people will tell you about. I know that really well being in the government, but really it's how can we get around this? How can we figure out a path through? Who can we talk to? It's a lot of going out into the world and building communities and making sure that you will do whatever it takes, because there's always a hard part in every PM's program or career. I faced it. I faced it deeply when I was launching a synthetic biology portfolio at DARPA, and they said, who is this crazy woman pitching using biology to build things and programming it? And it wasn't easy. It was probably one of the hardest programs I ever sold, but it ended up being, I think, a 12 or 13-year running program, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it really did launch an entire new field. And that's the opportunity here. Never stop fighting. So many people here I know have advocated for a program like this for a very long time. And the minute the secretary came into office, it was a campaign promise, and Glenn and the team said, this is our moment right now, and they got to work. Don't waste the moment. This is a very important time for this field, for neuroplastogens. We finally have a really great moment to start making progress. And as Glenn said, there's a lot of interest in doing more. So show up, put your best foot forward, take the risk, do your highest level of effort here, not just for yourselves, but for every taxpayer, for every person who is suffering, for the veterans who have come back and are suffering. We can make an enormous difference, and we truly can change the course of human health. That is an amazing mission, and I'm so thrilled to be here. I am so thrilled to work with these incredible PMs, and Glenn as an office director. It's the best job in the world from my perspective to be able to empower these incredible PMs and you as incredible performers. We will do our best to support you, to ensure you succeed, to make sure you have the resources that you need. And we're looking for you to put as much energy and effort in. Blast out the word about what we're doing here. Talk about the incredible opportunity that is happening right now. Bring other people into this. And I'm so excited to see what comes from here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you.
And now we have to get to work. So here's a rough outline for the day. I think you guys all have a version of this in your, that you can get from the table there. Also, I would note, if you have questions, I'm sure you have questions, there's a QR code that you can submit them at. Some of those questions we will answer here from the stage later. Some of those questions we will, all of those questions we will make available online in some format. So we're answering all of the necessary questions that you guys do have about Evident and about ARPA-H. I'm sure there's more housekeeping stuff that I'm supposed to do, but if it's okay with you, I'd love to just talk about science and what we're trying to do. I'd like to share a little bit about my journey to get here, so you hopefully fully understand the context. And as Alicia talked about, like us breaking through walls and like where the passion comes from, you will see that this the strong desire to serve the veterans is a through line within this whole effort. And so I got into the mental health field because of a veteran friend of mine who is not doing well. He's doing well now, but that was a heck of a journey. And it was very clear to me that we could do better. And my God, every time I picked up a rock and tried to understand what was wrong here, why wasn't this working, I would learn something else that was a bit shocking. And I think you guys have all had some version of this experience here. And so I won't belabor that point, but I want you guys to know that that has been routinely the groups that I have been able to engage with over time have been the best partners in trying to figure out how do we solve these problems. And so it's really amazing today, amongst this crowd, we have people that are from representing the lived experience and the voice of the people. We have people from our partners within the federal government. We have lots of great friends within HHS that are here, FDA, NIH, missing at least a couple of SAMHSA. These are all groups that have routinely been on this journey with us. And as you might expect, we're talking with the VA and figuring out the right ways to work with them on exactly how to do all this together. And so I want to make this point about the ecosystem and about this through line that we really are, this is a problem for everyone, and there's an extra amount of energy around being able to solve this for the veterans of this country. So I'm very excited to share more about what we're trying to do here, but you guys kind of needed that context to fully appreciate what walls I'm willing to bust down. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell you, this is the first investment that ARPA-H is making in mental health. And so we owe you a little bit more information. Evident is kind of weird, and that's delightful and wonderful and by design. It was deliberately a first step in a much larger campaign and set of topics. And so I'm going to take a couple minutes and talk to you a little bit about what we're trying to do in that campaign. And then Nate is going to talk more directly about Evident and answer many, or hopefully proactively and prospectively answer a bunch of your questions about that. And then we get to do this fun thing where we're going to shut up and listen to all of you. I guess Caitlin is also going to tell you about the contracting stuff. That's very important. You're going to assume that that's something that you guys are here to hear quite a bit about. So with that in mind, what are we trying to do here? What is the thing that's truly going to change the paradigm for human health? We have a perspective here, and parts of it might be wrong, but this is where we're starting, and this is what ARPA-H is aligned against and is going after. I don't think I need to tell any of you the size and shape of this problem. You pick your statistics about this, and it's hard, and it's getting harder. What I would note is that ARPA-H is looking at this with a slightly different lens than you might expect. And so it is very evident to us, see that pun? There's gonna be plenty of them. It is evident to us that there is a mental health and well-being has a meaningful effect on other systems, on other physical health systems. And so one of the things that we are looking at when Alicia talks about objective measures, when all of us are talking about objective measures, part of this has to do with how is it impacting the rest of your physical health. That is a quantitative measure that we can all agree exists and a link that exists, and something that we can quantitatively measure, which is slightly different than capturing the full richness of the experience that is mental health, mental illness, and well-being. So that's one very important distinction here, is we're looking at this in part to prevent chronic disease. So there's sort of 3 steps that we see that are critical to getting there, and I will give them short shrift now, but hopefully you can see the broader space of what we're going after. First and foremost is widely adoptive objective measurement. Hopefully you have a sense of why that matters so much. Many of you clearly have enough to spend your day with us, so we've convinced you somewhere, or you guys were already convinced beforehand, which is what I suspect is happening. The second is that we have to find effective prevention and treatment for everyone. And what that ultimately means is answering the question, what works for whom and when? The core of this whole effort is around answering that question, because we have a system that understands what works broadly, generally, for the population. But that's a very different question than the clinician who has someone in front of them, or the patient who is trying to figure out what is it that they need to be doing right now, or the friend and spouse that is trying to support the person who happens to be there. So with that in mind, once we have the sense of what objective measurement, what should that look like, now, the next step that we have to do is to figure out how does that actually line up with all the existing treatments that we have, those that have been rigorously clinically tested, and those that have not yet been rigorously clinically tested. How do we generate that body of evidence that allows us to know what is going to be effective for whom and when? And then third, if we have new measurements and new interventions and new ways of deploying them, we have to reimagine the way we're delivering care. And so there's a whole bunch of innovation that has to happen in the way in which that is being done. Is that training? Is that a different workforce? Is workforce the right way to think about it? How do we augment the workforce? So these are 3 huge major topics, and I suspect I see many of you nodding about some of these things. You guys have scars from trying to get these things done. My guess is you're trying to do them individually. And part of the challenge that we have is that we haven't tried to attack these problems together. These things are all interlocking. They're all mutually supportive. And so we actually need to make progress in all of them simultaneously. That's the kind of work that an ARPA can take on. So with that in mind, I'm only going to tell it, this is the broader context, and now let's spend some time looking very specifically about what Evident is going to do around that. I have 2 statistics slides for you. I'm not going to belabor these points, but the thing that I note is the compounding line up there. Behavioral illness exacerbates other chronic conditions and multiplies those costs 3 to 6x. So if we can prevent those conditions, we are going to meaningfully gain something in physical health, let alone the deliberate first-order effects of mental health and illness itself. And the second is we can talk ad nauseum about the measurement and the present state today. And the thing that I'd note at here is, less than 20% of clinicians are using measurement-based care in practice. So that is a number that has to be different if we expect to have something that we can optimize for, if we expect to have what a new system of care could look like. So those are the 2 things, if you're thinking about, if we're successful in a good number of years, those things will look meaningfully different. And we'll be able to very quickly answer the question of who needs what, when. So what does that actually look like? I would, rather than describe some abstract desiderata, let me point at an analogy here. Continuous glucose monitoring shifted the paradigm for diabetes care. How did it do that? It gave people direct access to actionable information in real time about a causal biomarker of that disease. So what's that equivalent that we need in mental health and well-being? Let's figure that out, because that's kind of where we're headed here with this first topic in and Evident taking some first steps towards that. It has to be accessible. And what do I really mean by that? How does it integrate into a person's life, and how does it integrate into clinical practice? If that doesn't work, we will continue to have less than 1 in 5 clinicians able to use this. It will not be integrated well into a patient's life. That needs to fundamentally change. The second is it has to be actionable, and so it has to be clear enough to indicate that we need to change direction and which direction to take. And it needs to be believable in those ways. It needs to be available in real time. Well, maybe that's not quite true. It needs to give us information at the speed of relevance so we can make the decisions that we have to make. Is that minute-by-minute measurements like a continuous glucose monitor? Maybe not. It might be hours or days. It's certainly not weeks and months. And the last thing is we need some causal information, and this is a place where I think the field has had a tremendous amount of challenge in that we are unable to predict well into the future what is working for whom and when. And so establishing some of that causality is some of the critical work that Evident is specifically going after. And so you could imagine success here, and this little icon off on the right is going to be used in a couple of more slides as we go forward to recognize what could full success look like here. And I would argue that when we are success here really looks like we can quickly change treatments that are not working, and we can prevent downstream chronic illnesses, whether that's future mental health challenges or physical health challenges. So that's the world that I'd like to live in. How about you guys? Sound about right? All right, let's do that. How do we get there? That's great, Glenn. That's a fun exercise. We're starting now effectively with psychological measures. We have something that's trying to capture the fullness and the richness of the experience of mental health and well-being and mental illness. And that's one piece of this, but it's not sufficient. The field sort of generally agrees that mental health and well-being is biopsychosocial. There's some other things you might add to that, but everyone sort of sees that there's pieces of that we should be looking at. And what I'd offer here is that there are validated measures that capture key elements of every one of these pieces. And so what we're going to try to do is let's start from those first principles and from what we can measure, and let's see where we can go from there. So when we talk about psychological effects, PHQ-9, GAD-7, flourishing, well-being, these are reasonable questions that will give us some sense of what's happening. Let us also be looking at an independent measure around what does biological meaning look like? What is the biological effect of having a mental illness effect? A biological effect of being stressed, of being under duress in some ways. That shows up in the way your physiology shows up, and that is very much relevant to the downstream chronic disease effects that you may end up incurring here. And so there are ways we can capture that today. There are wearables that will allow us to see heart rate variability, HRV, sleep onset latency, SOL. There's a bunch of other things that we could measure, but there are two that are very closely tied to how well our nervous system is working. So that's two pieces of this little triangle. And the third is the social and environmental. There's plenty of evidence of things that are relevant to our mental health and well-being that we can capture. And so one great one is this thing called homestay. And so your pattern at being at home and how often you're leaving, not just amount that you're being at home, but how does that pattern look? There's a bit more to that we can talk about. That tells us something about how you're doing socially. That's a wildly simplified for this slide. We'll talk about it at length there, but homestay is an important measure. There's other stuff that's relevant from your environment that does affect your mental health and well-being, like travel. Are you traveling? Everyone, I think, slept a little bit differently last night, whether or not they were catching an early flight or they were sleeping in DC. And what does the weather look like? That has a huge effect on a bunch of people. These are all pieces tell you a little bit about what's been going on with your mental health and well-being. So the first step that we're looking at, the first approximation of ground truth we're building up from these first principles, is a combination of these three. And I'll note that they're largely independent, which is how we're able to do some convergent evidence here. So what I'd note is we don't have a full answer, but what we do know is if these three independent measures are aligned, that could be a reasonable approximation of a well moment or a good day. And so we'll take that as first principle. We're going to end up trying to create some triangulation from these three independent measures for what good and bad presently looks like. If you are having all of those measures aligned in a great way, that's a fantastic indication that was a day in which our measures would indicate that you should be doing well. Is it right? Almost certainly not. But it's a good first approximation. That's where we're going to start. And so Nate will tell you a lot more about how we're getting from there and the ways in which we're actually capturing this data and moving forward. So what I'd offer here is that this is a progression. We've started off with the psychological variables that we as a field have spent a lot of time capturing and have a lot of good information in them, but only capture one dimension of this. We're going to, as part of Evident, start to capture some of this more broad information, trying to find out what the first approximation of truth is. And then a lot of future work is going to go into how do we get from that first approximation of truth to the second, better approximation of truth, and then eventually to something that looks more like a CGM for mental health. So Nate will tell you much more about those details. And I've said Nate's name a bunch of times here, so I'd rather be quiet and let him talk a bit more about what's going on here. But let me, by way of introduction, Nate Mohat is one of the program managers in the Proactive Health Office. Come on up here, Nate. And has a long history of working with veterans and at the VA, which is a non-trivial reason of why we're going after this in this moment. So, Nate.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Alicia. Oh man, I can't tell you how exciting it is to be standing up here today with all of you. Been dreaming about this moment for a long time. Glenn and I have been talking about these ideas for quite a while, and it was such an honor to get to work with him and the entire team at ARPA-H to bring this to life very quickly, and now to get to work with all of you on solving these problems. As Glenn mentioned, I've spent my career working in military and veterans mental health, about, I don't remember how long ago exactly, but when I left my postdoc, I had a really unique opportunity. My cousin had been commander of the Kansas Army National Guard, and he had a problem. More of his troops were dying when they came home from Iraq by suicide than they were dying in conflict. And so we put together a project to develop mental health first aid for military and veteran families and their families, and did a cluster randomized trial study of it. And that was my first step towards working with military communities. And it was really a call from a dear family member for help. And I have spent the rest of my career since then trying to develop new solutions that serve our veterans and military service members and their families to prevent suicide, to improve mental health and well-being. Evident is our next step along that path because, you know, we have some new opportunities here. So this is the fun thing here. We have a new world in mental health than when I began working with veterans and service members. And that is that we have these rapid acting interventions. And this changes everything that we thought might be possible in mental health. Now we can see change, meaningful change, in a large number of people receiving treatments on the order of a week, a day, hours, minutes maybe even. And this headline here is about psychedelics, but in addition to the neuroplastogen work, there are other modes of rapid-acting interventions, including neuromodulatory therapies and single-session behavioral therapies that are all showing these rapid effects. So this is great, this is wonderful, but we still lack the objective measurement. We still lack the ground truth that lets us know what that change is, how we can predict who's going to have that change, how we can figure out whether in the moment you're responding to the intervention in the way that we want you to. And so that's what Evident is designed to go after. What if we had widely adopted objective measures for mental health and well-being? And so we're going to kickstart this all of our behavioral health work at ARPA-H in trying to address that question. Today, we still have a situation in which our treatments are often inaccessible, ineffective, and even if you get to treatment, there's a large chance that you won't respond to the treatment the first time, the second time, the fifth treatment you receive. We can't guarantee that you're going to get a good treatment response. And yet we also know from decades of research that measurement-based care can improve treatment outcomes, and we don't use it. We don't use it because we don't have the right measures. And so Evident is going to identify likely candidates for objective clinical endpoints and then accelerate rapid, personalized, and durable mental and behavioral health treatments. That's our goal, and that's the challenge. We want your best ideas to help us accomplish these goals. As stated multiple times, this is just a first step. This is a rapid mechanism to get this work underway. And as Glenn spoke to, we have the biological, psychological, and social measures that we want to triangulate around. And this first step is really about identifying which of those objective measures in each of these three buckets are the best for helping predict helping both measure a treatment response and predict proactively who's going to respond to which treatment. And then ultimately, as we triangulate these, we put these together into a data ecosystem and a research ecosystem, we can build what could be like a Rosetta Stone for objective measurement in behavioral health. And if we're successful, what we want to do is then move into further discovery that allows us to establish those causal biomarkers, to optimize the predictive capability of our measurements, and to improve integration of these measurements into users' lives and into clinical practice. And then, as Glenn mentioned multiple times, this then impacts all of our health. There's an entire brain-body connection here, and if we can do better for mental health, we're going to do better for the entire health and well-being of the people that are in need, which is, frankly, all of us when it comes to mental health. So, Evident is structured to have two different calls for solutions. The first one is an exploratory call for solutions. These are technical areas 1 through 3, and I'm going to talk about the nuts and bolts of each of these in a moment. The thing to note about this here, though, is that for this exploratory call, this is a really unique solicitation. The entire thing about Evidence, super exciting, allows us to move very fast. These are fixed price awards. We don't want any cost proposals. We want your best idea for $4 million. And then for technical area 4, we're going to be asking you to contribute data to a data and biospecimen repository to enable the future of behavioral health measurement science. And that is also a very unique solicitation mechanism that I'll talk about a little bit later. So let's talk about each of these technical areas now. The first one, objective measurement of clinical change. Well, we know that our mental and behavioral health changes rapidly and continuously over the course of minutes, hours, days, and yet our measurements today are really optimized to measure change on an incremental, every couple months basis. Instead, we need a paradigm shift where we have measurement that operates on the time scale of those regular fluctuations in our mental and behavioral health that we can integrate into our everyday life. And so our goal for TA1 is to identify those likely measurement candidates for continuous, minimally invasive, and scalable indicators of behavioral health. Speaking again about this biopsychosocial triangulation, in technical area 1, we have a minimum set of data that we are going to require every performer under this technical area to collect across these 3 domains, and they're listed here. And so these biopsychosocial measures are required in technical area 1. And in addition, we'd love it, it's not required, but it's highly encouraged for TA1 to have an FDA clinical endpoint embedded in the trial as well. And what kind of measures? Your best ideas. What are the best things that you can measure objectively? And on the right here are just some ideas. Don't have to be exactly these things. We really put the call out to you to tell us what the best solutions are to tackle this question. Technical area 2, again, it's related to this sort of better time scale of measurement, but we're moving even more immediate. We're moving into the therapeutic session, into the treatment while it's occurring. We want measures that allow us to know whether the treatment is working in the moment on the timescale of seconds and minutes even. And so what is happening to the person in the moment while they're receiving a therapy that predicts whether they're gonna be improving or whether this treatment isn't working? So we can know right now while we're delivering the therapy whether it's working. What's happening between the person and the facilitator? We know psychotherapy And psychedelic-assisted therapies have a dyadic component of both the facilitator or the therapist and the patient. So can we measure those dyadic relationships? Maybe those are good predictors of whether the therapy is working. And then what are the ideal environmental conditions so that we know that we're putting you in a position to have most likely the strongest effect? And so our goal really here are those individual, dyadic, and environmental predictors that let us know that this is a good therapy session, that it is moving the needle for the person receiving the treatment. And then technical area 3 is about risk and durability. Right now, we have a trial and error treatment approach. We give you a treatment, wait a couple months, a couple weeks to a couple months, readjust, readjust, readjust. But what if we could say ahead of time, we knew whether first of all, we need to know which treatment is counterindicated for each person. So are you going to be at risk to have an adverse event or a negative side effect in response to a treatment? That's one question. But then the other question is also, are you likely to respond to this treatment? And are you likely to have a durable response that lasts months or years? And so technical area 3, we want your best ideas to deliver actionable insights for risk mitigation, treatment matching, and monitoring of treatment effect long-term. Few nuts and bolts about the requirements for technical areas 1 through 3 in this exploratory call. We want the data to be collected within the context of an emerging rapid-acting intervention research. So we've listed some example therapies that hit the mark in terms of potentially being in scope. But the key here is, our intent is to focus on rapid acting, to focus on these 3 categories of treatment, but we're open to other ideas. We're open to other interventions. Give us your best idea to answer the questions of each of the technical areas. That said, there's at least there's 2 really important requirements here. First one, there needs to be prior evidence of safety in humans to be eligible for evident. We're not doing preclinical and animal trials. We're not developing brand new therapies that have never been tested before, and we are not doing first-in-human studies. The second is you need to have a study underway. We are not funding new clinical trials. We are not funding you to stand up an entire research team. We are plussing up your existing work so that we can expand the data collected within the context of interventions and intervention research. These exploratory TAs are not limited to clinical trials, however. They could include observational studies, reanalysis of existing data, and even studies that occur in real-world practice settings, so evaluation studies, so long as there's an existing IRB protocol that can be amended. Okay, I'm going to get a little dry here for a moment because I just need to read through these, and these are just sort of the in and out of scope. So first, we've talked a lot about veterans. It's not a hard requirement, but we want thoughtful inclusion of veterans in this program. And in particular, at a minimum, measuring and identifying who in your sample is a veteran and isn't a veteran. So even if you aren't out there doing a study at the VA, there's a good chance that you have veterans in your sample. We'd like to know that. Secondly, intervention research that targets behavioral health symptoms and/or behavioral health disorders. Third, proposals to analyze existing data collected in the context of emerging rapid-acting intervention research, including neuroplastogens, neuromodulation, and digital therapeutics, or other compelling interventions. These are, again, what's in scope. Fourth, proposals to collect and analyze data supplementary to existing study protocols. That's in scope. Collection of supplemental data from a subset of enrolled participants, from entire study samples during planned or new follow-up assessments, and/or from intervention control and/or healthy participants. This is a way of basically saying anything that adds to your existing study is in scope. Proposals limited to existing IRB proposed modification and amendments. That's in scope. You're modifying an existing IRB protocol. Data collected in the context of clinical trials, absolutely in scope, and also data collected outside of the context of clinical trials, including observation studies and real-world clinical settings, and then also in scope adult populations. Out of scope, if you don't have a behavioral health intervention, if you're not doing research on a behavioral health intervention, it's out of scope. If there's no prior evidence of safety in humans, that's out of scope. No inclusion of human subjects, that's out of scope. And brand new clinical trials, also out of scope. Brand new development of new therapeutics or new interventions where there's no existing protocol in place or under review, that's out of scope. And new human subjects research requiring a new IRB protocol is also out of scope. And then lastly, pediatric populations, out of scope for evident. That's not to say we're not interested in children. Out of scope for evident, we absolutely hope to tackle pediatric mental health in future efforts at ARPA-H, so we'll be getting there. Moving on to technical area 4, which is our second opportunity, our second request for solutions. This is really very unique, and we're really excited to give TA4 a try. TA4 really is about collecting standardized biopsychosocial data plus biospecimens across multiple ongoing intervention studies and putting them into a repository for the future of science. This is not for analyses. This technical area is for collecting data and submitting it to the ARPA-H biodata repository. So interestingly enough, there is no technical volume necessary to apply for funding for TA4. This is purely a commitment from you to collect the data that we want collected and deliver it to our data repository. There is a list of eligibility requirements and commitments from you to conform to our requirements, and I'll talk about those specific requirements on the next slide, and Caitlin will go into that in more detail as well. And then lastly, this is a rolling submission. This is a first come, first served basis solicitation. So it's open, you submit, you're eligible, you tell us how many people you're gonna collect data from, which data you're gonna collect, and at what time points. We calculate how much money you get, and the award is made. So here's what makes a study eligible to apply for funding from TA4. A registered interventional clinical trial, and you have to give us your registration website that the trial is registered under and the protocol number. So this would be, for example, an FDA registered clinical trial with a registration number on clinicaltrials.gov or the equivalent governing body for clinical trials. It needs to test either a neuroplastogen or a neuromodulation therapy. The treatment has to have demonstrated safety in humans and has to have demonstrated rapid effects within less than 2 weeks. And the trial collects data on one or more FDA-approved endpoints. The FDA-approved endpoints are important for TA4 because one of our goals is to help redefine what the correct clinical endpoints are for mental health. So we need those FDA clinical endpoints in this data repository. You have to have a completed, ready-to-go IRB protocol that is either approved or under review at the time of submitting the solution summary. And you have to commit to collecting the essential data at baseline 1 week and 3 months. I'll talk about that on the next slide. And then you're accepting our data submission requirements and our data rights agreements. Data collection has to begin before October 1st, 2026. And you have to accept all the agreements in our base agreement and become a consortium member. Ineligible, any other type of intervention, interventions without demonstrated safety and interventions without demonstrated rapid effects. Those are out of scope and would make your submission ineligible. Okay, so essential data collection, it's the same as what we had in what I described on TA1, with the addition of FDA clinical. You have to collect this biopsychosocial data, these data points, at baseline, 1 week, and 3 months. Additionally, you can propose to collect them at other time points, such as 6 months or 12 months post-treatment. And then additionally, we have a bunch of optional add-ons for biospecimen collection. Blood, saliva, stool, and EEG are 4 optional add-ons, and you specify which time points, you have to do baseline obviously, but in addition to baseline, which other time points you would collect those biospecimens from, and which ones of how many people you'd collect it from. So how do we figure out how much the award is? Well, you fill out a spreadsheet. You tell us first, what is the maximum number of participants that you're gonna collect that essential data from? And then you say, what are the add-on data collections that you're gonna deliver and at which time points and for how many people? That all then rolls up into a total dollar amount that you will receive and a milestone and payment schedule. And so all of that is fixed. The payment and the milestones are all fixed in this award. Okay, so lastly, few little expectations. As Glenn mentioned, this is our first step in mental health, and we're really excited to have you all here. Big part of our goal here is to build this ecosystem, to build this larger partnership and team with all of you. So while collaboration, like embedded into your award, is not mandatory, we want you all speaking to each other, working collaboratively. We're gonna solve this together. And so in order to do that, we're also gonna facilitate a bunch of coordination opportunities between you. There's gonna be a bunch of mandatory sort of meetings that Glenn, I, and other folks at ARPA-H will be having with you along the way, including quarterly meetings where we bring all of the TA 1 through 3 teams together to learn from each other and dialogue. Then additionally, expectations are pretty standard. Accomplish the milestones, but even more so, coming back to something Alicia said at the beginning, if it's not working out, if you have a barrier that's getting in the way, don't delay. Call me, let's talk about it, let's figure out a solution. Maybe there's a pivot that needs to happen. Maybe we need to redo that milestone schedule because something really important has changed, that if we make the change, will enable the future. And if we don't make the change, we're just stuck in the mud. We don't want to get stuck in the mud. So in addition to accomplishing the milestones, we want you to be ready to pivot fast to move into those new innovations that we're going to discover along the way. If we're doing this really well, we're going to change as we go. We're going to figure out something really exciting that we weren't expecting on day one, and we're going to pivot to accomplish that. So additionally, maintain good regulatory and safety protocols, obviously a requirement. And then lastly, we're building this data repository. This is not just about the 2-year exploratory studies. This is also about building the team and building the data set that we can continue to leverage into the future. So big expectation for every performer, both on the exploratories as well as TA4, is to contribute data to the data repository and to work collaboratively with us and other performers to make sure that that data is standardized and consistent across teams so that it's really interoperable. I can't quite say that word. Okay, so one last thing, fast timeline. TA4, we're ready. Send us your ideas. Submit your spreadsheets, submit your attestations. For TA 1 through 3, we have a solicitation process. So proposals are due December 22nd. We're gonna select a subset of you then to come and give in-person pitches. We'll do that in mid-January. We'll announce awards mid-February. We want people under contract early to mid-March. And we'll hold a program kickoff meeting with all the performers early April. So not only did we do this fast to get here today, but we're gonna move fast to get you all launched and starting this research and data collection. Looking forward to it. Thank you all so much.
It's my pleasure to introduce Mike Stebbins, who's at ATI. They have made so much of this possible, and so much of the speed that came from this is because of the work that ATI is doing in partnership with us. And so with that, Mike.
Good morning. It was really exciting to see Alicia come as new director of ARPA-H, share a little bit of her vision. I really like that speed resonated with everybody. But for her to be able to open the event, wonderful. And then Glenn and Nate to really sit down and talk about, provide details on the Evident program. It resonates with me. Literally in the last 22 months, I lost both my mother first and then my father, and they both had different stages of dementia, and one, particularly for my mother, came on very quickly, and it was just difficult. So there's a personal level to this, but it is much needed research, and it really drives home an example of why ARPA-H was created in the first place. So I couldn't be more excited to be involved with this, the unique mission set of ARPA-H to develop and implement transformative healthcare outcomes. How can you not get excited about that? And Alicia mentioned a couple times, Glenn's spoken to it already, you guys have already demonstrated engagement, building a community. That's one role that ATI will help ARPA-H do. So as Glenn mentioned, I'm Mike Stebbins. I'm a senior vice president with ATI. We are the firm that helps execute the customer experience hub for ARPA-H. And we spent the last 10 years working at the intersection of government funding, and industry writ large to really drive advanced R&D, breakthrough technologies, commercialization in the broad medical, healthcare, biotech space. So we're extremely excited to work with ARPA-H on this effort. And really we sit at that intersection and help drive those connections, those connecting of the dots that really helps network within a network and bring those solutions to bear to solve these grand problems. One thing that really enthuses me about the Evident effort is that drive moving away from a one-size-fits-all mentality, a very qualitative approach to much more tailored individual approach that's much more quantitative based. And so to gather that robust data on an individual level from clinical outcomes, and then to understand what those patients' unique responses are is really important. So I will get off the stage. I'm going to introduce Sarah Bailey, who's our program manager for this effort within ATI. If you have any questions, our team is here. We're happy to help, and we're excited to be a part of this alongside of ARPA-H. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So just a little bit about the CX Hub. We were created to support ARPA-H's mission of ensuring better health outcomes for all Americans. And we do that by helping to cultivate a community of organizations and individuals that can provide solutions and provide the perspective of the end user and the stakeholder so that the programs, the technologies and solutions that are being created can go out into the ecosystem and actually fit and meet the needs of the patient, of the healthcare provider, so that we can, in fact, make sure all Americans are living healthier, longer lives. The CX Hub is a community of over 600 organizations. We have everything from community-based organizations, patient advocacy groups, small businesses, large academic institutions. But the goal is really to build them and bring them all together so they can exchange ideas and build teams that can really propose solutions to ARPA-H's questions that will really go out and have the desired impact on the healthcare ecosystem. That's a little bit about the CX Hub. I don't know if the slides are ready to go into the bids platform. If not, we'll just talk to it real quick. All of your submissions, your proposals will be submitted through the bids platform. You can access that from the CX Hub webpage. You will need to register to be able to submit. So if you go to the webpage, link to bids, on the right-hand side, you'll see register as a new user, you will want to register as a proposer, not as government. But the registration is instant, and you'll be able to log in there and submit your required documents. On top of that, as part of the solicitation packages that are posted to the Evident landing page, there are step-by-step instructions on how to submit your proposals through the bids platform. So if you've already gone out online and you've downloaded that solicitation package, there's, I think it's Appendix B, will provide those step-by-step instructions on how to submit the proposals. I just wanted to also highlight a couple more of the deadlines, and then I'll pass it over to Caitlin. There is a question deadline, so please have all of your questions submitted either via email or through the QR code today by December 12th. After that point, we will post the FAQs on the Evident landing page. And then just to reiterate, the deadline for TAs 1 through 3, that's December 22nd. So just make sure you're taking note of that. And I believe the time is 1 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you get it in before that. If you have any questions, happy to help. And Caitlin?
All right, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to talk about how you go the process and what we need from you so that you can hopefully get some money at the end of the day. And so I first want to talk about how this is very different, not only for ARPA-H, but for the government, and that's because Evident is a different program. So we were very intentional about how we did everything, and it's really tailored to hopefully help you guys, help us, help you back. So we call these mechanisms our requests for solutions, and we have 2 of them, 109 and 110. So I'll refer to those as our RFSs. And again, we at ARPA-H actually make up terms to call attention to how it is different. It's not to confuse you, but we do want you to pause and say, what are they talking about? Let me actually dig into this and look, because it's not how a lot of traditional government does their contracting processes. I'm going to give you an overview of each of the RFSs because they are fairly distinct, and I imagine have fairly distinct audiences even in here. So for 109 first, that's our TAs 1 through 3. Nate already kind of went through the TAs in depth with you, but the overall process will be a solution summary, a pitch, and then award. And I do want to note that submission portal opens the 11th, which is tomorrow. Again, intentional, we wanted you guys to come here to hear all of this, refine everything, and the portal opens tomorrow. 110 is for TA4. Again, a very different process than 1 through 3. So that has everything that Nate talked about. Very different for us is a rolling submission that we'll talk about a little bit more. It's that fixed price per participant. We'll get into that also. The process for that is you submit, we check for compliance, eligibility, we award. That is a very quick process. And that portal is open now. So if that's of interest to you, that is available now. Okay, I want everybody to take like a hard focus. So this next part will only be 109, TAs 1 through 3. Some highlights for the TAs 1 through 3 that we'll get into a little bit more depth. So the solution summaries are required. I know we've talked about that before, but that is a hard requirement that you must submit a solution summary. From there, it'll be invitation to pitch. We'll talk a little bit about that process in a minute. One big note that Nate did talk about is 1 solution summary per TA. So if you are planning to submit to more than 1 TA, you need more than 1 solution summary. But we really want to emphasize quality over quantity there. And the other thing, because of the next bullet, a fixed amount, if there's any duplication, then it should not be separate submissions. We don't want duplication of effort in different submissions. So the next thing, which I'm actually really excited about because the government almost never does this, it is a fixed price, $4 million. You, if selected, will get $4 million. We want your absolute best effort for that. Give us everything that you can give us for $4 million. No cost proposal, that horrible spreadsheet that we always ask you to fill out, cost volume, like we are not doing that. You get $4 million, period, dot, nothing will change there. Maximum performance of 24 months, and so that's outlined in the RFS. If you can do it faster, we clearly like everything that can go faster here, propose that, that's great. If not, 24 months, that's your maximum. As Sarah kind of talked about, so how this process will work is, if selected for award, ARPA-H, so I as the agreements officer will direct ATI to contract with you. It will be an ARPA-H project, but it will be contracted through ATI's mechanisms. And again, that helps us just go faster. From your standpoint, there should be almost no difference. It'll just be who is sending you the email with a document to sign at the end of the day. Still an ARPA-H project. You will work with the ARPA-H program managers that you already heard from today. It's just an administrative mechanism. TAs 1 through 3 do have a negotiable statement of work. So there might be some things that after solution summary pitch, we go through all of that. There are areas that we can negotiate. It will not change your $4 million, but if there's tweaking or something that kind of better serves, helps us help you, like we can work through that process with you. Okay, solution summary. So these are due by December 22nd, 1 p.m. We're gonna probably say that many more times at some point today because that's really important. Often in the government, there is the opportunity to ask for an extension or something like that. Those will be extremely limited because of our pitch schedule, because of the schedule we're working on. So December 22nd, 1 p.m. is our drop dead. Please have your submission done by then. Again, one solution summary per TA. I'm gonna be intentionally redundant on some of these things, and we want you to identify the primary TA that you're applying for. We don't expect it to fit all in a neat little box. If there's some overlap, that's fine. Please just let us know. Again, we outlined in the solution summary how we are going to evaluate those solution summaries, and then select solution summaries will be invited to the pitches. For TAs 1 through 3, again, the portal opens tomorrow. So, but something I do want to mention is there is no benefit to being first or early for this submission. So we want your best. I don't care. I would recommend not doing 12:59 on December 22nd, but there is no benefit to submitting early for this one. The window will close, and then everything will be evaluated. So please take your time, be very thoughtful and intentional as you're going through that. This is just a little bit on entity eligibility. So as the government, we are not going to entertain awards with FFRDC, so federally funded research and development centers, at any level, so not at the prime or the sub-level. One thing that we do want to talk about is SAM.gov. So you need the unique entity ID, the UEI, and it can take a little bit of time. SAM.gov was pretty impacted by the government shutdown, so if this is something that you are considering submitting for, please do that now. You don't need it until award, but it can take a lot of time. And then if there are any non-US entities, it's probably easiest just to, we lay that out very clearly in the RFS. So we do give preference to domestic entities, but that does not preclude international entities from submitting as long as they can meet those requirements. Okay, a little bit more on the solution summaries. Again, we're still on TAs 1 through 3 specifically here. So the solution summaries are mandatory. I think I'm on time 4 of saying that one. They are not to exceed 6 pages. And we do give you a lot of guidance in the Appendix A of the RFS, so please go look at that. If you feel the need to use that even as a template, that is completely fine. As long as we can easily ingest the information you're trying to give us. So please follow that appendix that you just heard about, the ATI submission system, so bids, so you'll go through that. You will submit it in bids. It will not be submitted to ARPA-H directly. And then notification of the invitation to pitch will go out via email. We will not be providing other feedback on the solution summaries. And we are expecting those. We're trying to be very cognizant of the holidays. So sometime early to mid-January is our goal for getting those out, just to manage expectations. The pitch then, so if you are selected to pitch, you'll obviously be informed of that, and we'll give you a date and time. We can work through that process when we get there, if there's a conflict or something. You will have required documents that we'll ask for before pitch, but then the big thing here is you'll see it's a 15-minute presentation with 30 minutes of Q&A. So we aren't intending the typical, probably government pitch, we want your solution, and then we want to just pick your brain and have a conversation so that we can understand what it is you're actually trying to achieve and accomplish with that. So it's a collaborative, it's a back and forth. It's not just you stand up like I am here now and talk at people. It will be interactive, and those will be virtual or in person, but we'll get through the administrative details again for those selected to pitch. Okay, so this is a hard break. We're going to now talk about the second RFS 110. So this is specifically TA4 and TA4 only. This one is very different for the government. I think I've said that again, like Evident as a whole is very, very different. We're doing rolling submissions, which is not something we typically do. So that portal is open now. And a question we've had a lot is, when will it close? Well, it'll close when we run out of money. And we don't know exactly when that will be because of the scale for every submission. As we talked about, it's based on the number of participants, so we don't know when it will close. Maximum performance there is 24 months, and again, it's a fixed award amount based on the participant. So Nate showed you that like awesome spreadsheet that our team, it was amazing how they did all of that. And you plug in your numbers, and we like spit out a number. And that is what the fixed award will be. It's a fixed statement of work. So this one is no negotiation. It's going to be a pretty quick process. So we'll get to a little bit more of the process in just a moment. But eligibility, again, very similar to the other TAs. We're not awarding to FFRDCs at any level. A UEI is required for award, so especially this one. Awards will come quickly, so please, if you don't have a UEI, register like today, if you can, to start that process. And then non-US entities, there are specific requirements in this TA for non-US entities, but also for shipping and such of the sample. So please make sure you read the RFS for any non-US entities. Okay, the award application package. So that's what we're calling the thing that you put into the system and are submitting to us. We are going to review those in the order that they come in. So it's going to be a first come, first served. And we are only screening those for compliance. Did you check the appropriate boxes? And then eligibility, which is that eligibility sheet that Nate talked about. Do you have everything that you're supposed to have? And those on our end, if you've seen it, it's a yes, no, fill in the box type situation. And then we're moving to award. So there's not going to be a prolonged back and forth. You have already agreed up front to our statement of work. You know the price. We know the price. We are awarding if you are compliant and eligible. So it's going to be a pretty quick process, and I think we're all really excited about that because the government is not often known for moving very, very quickly, but these will be pretty quick turnarounds. Okay, this is just a little bit of final guidance. So the first one, that nothing today should be construed as amending the RFS. I'm actually looking back to the team. If we have not already, before you leave today, we do have an amendment that will be posted. You guys submitted a lot of great questions, and some of them we realized we did need to amend the RFS. So please go take a look at that. The changes are very obvious in there, but nothing today modifies what is in that RFS. Questions, either submit them there or we have the QR code. Again, I cannot harp enough, like SAM.gov was really hampered by a lot of the government shutdown, so if you don't have that, please do it as soon as possible. And the final one, this is not meant to be patronizing at all. I wrote this document and I don't know the answers to all of your questions for what's in there. So I have to read it. I have to like double check myself. So please just read the RFS. There's a ton of great information in there, and we tried to be very intentional about how we laid it all out. I can't tell you guys the number of conversations we had, like, well, if you were a performer, would you expect that to be in this section or this section? So we truly tried to cater to all of you, honestly, because we want your ideas. We want the best that you guys have. So we tried as much as our government minds can to think like you and make it make sense. So please read the RFS, we're going to get answers posted to the first round of questions very, very soon. If not today, then tomorrow. The deadline is Friday, so please get those in. We'll get them turned around as fast as we can. And then after that, I think we have wrap up, and we're going to answer some questions now. So thank you all.
So thank you guys who have been submitting questions. Those of you who haven't, please do consider doing that. Each of the questions that we get, we are going to take a look at. I'll answer a couple of them here from the stage, but as Caitlin, I'm sure, has just discussed, it's a bit of a process to make sure that it is fair and everyone has all the same information as they're bidding. And so I'll answer a couple ones that keep coming up, but ultimately you'll see all of these things posted publicly or some version thereof in the next 24-ish hours. ish. And let me also note, like, this is part of the point of Proposers Day, and so I'm thrilled that we are having this dialogue. It's a kind of weird dialogue, and forgive us for that, but it's helping us refine these mechanisms. What were we not clear enough about? What is the thing that's still missing? What's the weird corner case that we didn't think about? Our contracts people are really good at finding corner cases. They've done a lot of that over the last 3 months, but it's only been over the last 3 months we've been trying to find all those corner cases. So you guys have helped us find some more. Thanks a lot. Those of you that found corner cases, you will not get answers today. We got to go back and figure that out. So, and I don't know exactly where it's posted. ATI is going to be posting it at some point, and so I hope you guys get a link to where that's going to be posted, and forgive me that I don't have that answer for you right now. So I have 3 things that I would say in terms of new questions that we've gotten that seem to be coming up over and over and over again. Is treatment X in scope? And X all over the place. I won't even try to list all of them, but we keep getting a version of this question. And so what I'd say is, maybe. The real answer there is, I'll give you the high level intention and then a little bit of programmatics. The high level intention is stuff that moves quickly, rapid acting. There's some other stuff that might be interesting, but I can tell you with certainty that if we've got a great bunch of rapid acting proposals, that's where we want to be looking at presently. And so if you have evidence that the thing moves quickly and treats quickly, let us know that, especially if it's not obvious that that is the case. So rapid acting really is the intention here. So that's 1. 2, what is how do you actually, we definitely can't enumerate all of these things that are in and out of scope at every moment in time. What I'd say is submitting a proposal that thoughtfully designs what it is you want to do is going to help us understand not just what you would do with that one particular thing, but what do you as a team want to be doing? Where's the space that you're trying to operate? And so that is useful information in and of itself. 1. 2, what data? What scale of data? How should I collect the data? What's the device that I should use? There's all of those sorts of like very reasonable questions, and I have like 3 answers for you on that one. There are like standard SOPs that will be coming out that are not yet out, but we have some sense of what these things are going to look like. We will be able to be prescriptive about some of them. Take back 1 step. We are super, super prescriptive about what you do for TA4, the rolling submission. We're like kind of prescriptive about what you do for TA1. And then TAs 2 and 3 is like, I don't know, you guys tell me what is the most relevant data? Bring it to the table. So very specifically, for the ones where we have some prescriptive to offer, there's a table in the request for solutions that tells you something about that. And so I'm told that the table 1, and note that you should have an amendment to this particular RFS. It should have some red text in table 1 within the exploratory request for solutions. That has an indication with a plus sign for everything that is required. And so that should give you a bare minimum set. You must capture these things for TA1. That's 1. And then for TA4, there's a spreadsheet. And if you haven't seen the spreadsheet yet, go take a look at the spreadsheet. I think it spells out pretty clearly like not the exact protocol, but the kind of data that you are trying to we require you to collect for TA4. And so there's 2 places in the request for solutions that have the answers to those sorts of what data, on what scale, at what time horizon. Sound good? Okay, nobody's mutinying yet, that's good. And the last question that comes up very frequently is around, this is one that Nate and I we talked past each other for at least 4 or 5 weeks on, is like, does it have to be a clinical trial? And it turns out that that's a really complicated question. And like, what is the definition of clinical trial? My God. So the answer here is for TA4, it has to be a registered clinical trial, what we've been referring to as capital C, capital T, FDA type, right, from a body like the FDA, with the body like an FDA. That's a clinical trial is required for TA4. For TAs, for TAs 1, 2, and 3, it doesn't have to be a registered clinical trial. it has to be a lowercase c, lowercase t in some capacity. You are studying a clinical effect. There is a trial that is being run to understand a clinical effect, but it is not necessarily something that is registered and running with FDA or an equivalent body. I think a critical way of looking at this is the intention around this was to augment. Many of you have existing things that you are doing, and so trying to help you guys augment that and collect more data that you might not have done otherwise, but you already have a patient population for, you already have a plan to get a patient population for, you already have an ongoing piece of work, whether that's inside or outside of a formal capital C, capital T clinical trial. Was that clear as mud? Yeah, I was afraid of that. Is there anything else did I screw up any of that, Caitlin? Okay, not yet anyway, which is good, we'll take that. So, I don't have more Q&As that I can share from the stage right now that are showing up frequently. If something that I've said is still not clear, please do try to resubmit your question and we'll make sure we get answers to it. That is part of the intention of today. So what I'd rather do, I don't even have my agenda. The next thing is lunch, is that right? Do I have that right? What I'd rather do is wrap up here and give you guys time to go spend time together. I would greatly encourage you to spend time with each other, find people that you don't know in this ecosystem and talk to them. This is the team broadly that's going to get us across the line and is going to make these very large impacts on mental health and well-being. So the one thing that I would like to say before we leave here is there are so many people that have made this possible. And this is largely where our portion of the agenda is going to shut up, and we're going to, from here, really transition to more hearing from you guys and more interactive work. And so I would just hope for all the ARPA-H people and ATI people that are in the room, would you mind standing up? Might already be standing up. Oh, there we go. We got some people. These are some of the many members of the team here that have been pulling this stuff together and making this move. And I'd say for every person in the room, there's 2 or 3 people that are outside, and for every one of them, there's probably 2 or so more people outside of this building that have made this possible as quickly as this has been. And so, as much as you see like me and Nate and Caitlin up here talking about these things, this is a huge team effort that has been going on for the last couple months to get this done. So I deeply appreciate them, and I hope you guys do as well. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here. I have some very brief closing remarks here, and the intention really is to return you back to the ecosystem and to talk to each other and to continue to build those bonds. So I'm really glad for all of you guys that are still here over the course of the day. This has been wonderful. So let me just quickly revisit what the intentions were for the course of the day, and you have to grade us. Did we actually do what we had intended to? We certainly shared a bunch of stuff about Evident. I hope we made some stuff more clear. Is that accurate? We got some roughly yes? Okay, good. Some things got clearer. I'll take that. And the second is that I really hope that we had activated this ecosystem and built some bonds and connections that didn't exist previously. So I would ask of each of you, raise your hand if you have met someone that you didn't know before that's awesome, you can't wait to work with. Yes? Whew. Okay, good. That's the real KPI. And the other question is, did anybody scheme anything particularly interesting? You've got some new idea that you just can't wait to go do something about? It's like, all right, not as many of you. Well, that's okay. We're going to work on that one next time too, but also great. So that makes me very happy. The ecosystem is activated. ARPA-H will be doing a lot more in this space. And I would note, as I did in the beginning, not all of you will be performers on Evident, but all of you guys are part of this team. We are trying to figure out what the next steps of this will look like. And so I'm thankful for the time and space and energy that you have had and brought here. I do have a couple more pleas for you. One gigantic plea is that I will not be here in 484 days. Nate will not be here in 750 days. Pierre will not be here in 750 days-ish. Shirley will not be here in 750 days-ish. We are all deliberately term. We will be kicked out, and someone else has to do this job. And so Alicia said it early today, and hopefully you guys see the fun stuff that we can do here. But I need new program managers. I need new office directors. If you are interested at all in joining ARPA-H, clock is ticking, my friends. But seriously, we will always be recruiting, and particularly in this area, we're about to invest a bunch in mental health and well-being. And so I would ask, if you are interested in those sorts of things, please come find me, please find Nate, find some of the people from ARPA-H, and we will get you connected and start that process and see if Even if today is not the day to join that, not the day for you to join the government, we do need you to come in and pick up this torch when I put it down. Thank you. We mentioned this to many people over the course of the day, and I just want to reiterate it. Evident is only one set of opportunities that are presently open for ARPA-H, and so there is a standing open solicitation for the Proactive Health Office that if you have an idea that is great and ARPA hard and does not fit Evident, please go submit to that open submission. So in other agencies, this might be called like an open BAA, broad agency announcement. That might be what BAA stands for. I'm actually not entirely sure. Great, okay, I got some thumbs up. This is an evergreen spot where you can come and provide your new ideas and the sorts of stuff that you want us to fund. And that solicitation will always be open. And so if you look for Proactive Health ISO Innovative Solutions Offering, I think I got that one right too. But that's the name of that solicitation that will come to my office in particular, and that is there forever. And so we had a lot of people that have interest in doing work with pediatrics, and that does not fit within Evident, but it for sure could fit within the PHO ISO. So if you have anything else that feels like that doesn't quite fit the Evident thing, but you are interested in working with us, please do go submit it there. That's how we can grab ideas from you guys and help influence the rest of the work that goes on here. There's a couple of thank yous that I have to make here, and am joyful to do so. This, as I mentioned earlier today, is the result of an entire team that has been working on these things tirelessly over the last couple of months, years in some cases, but certainly months very intensively. So I want to explicitly thank all of the ARPA-H folks, all of the ATI folks, all of the teams that have been working behind the scenes tirelessly to get this done. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of them and all the work that they've put into this. For a personal moment here, this is like the amount of energy that's in this room, and every time I have to convince you guys to stop talking to each other is amazing. Some of you I've known for years, many of you I'm just meeting, and it's clear that it is evident that there's a lot of energy in this ecosystem. It's also evident to me that there's a lot of hope. That, as Alicia said, there are things that we all believed were impossible 5 years ago and 10 years ago that feel imminent now. That's pretty cool. That's what this is intended to do. And so I'm thankful. I hope you guys all sit with that energy and that excitement and take that with you as we go into this next section of this sprint to really meaningfully move the needle for mental health and well-being. And as Alicia would say, it is evident that this will change the paradigm for mental health and well-being. So thank you to the team. Thank you to the team all of you are now on. Thank you for the time that you have given and the brain space that you have given and the time that you will give to this mission as we go forward. And with that, I would like to release you into the world. Thank you, guys.